today's office hours will be presented by Dr. Brazil, and I'm excited because she is from the University of Southern Mississippi, and she will be sharing with us case management techniques. Some of you have been in this field for decades, for years, and this is the first time we're doing a case management training. My thought process is never too late to learn a new way of doing things or to improve a technique. So, as you know, ESG requires case management. Every month, we must be contacting clients and providing case management. All of our programs require a service plan. Our goal is to move people from housing instability and homelessness into housing stability. And hopefully they don't have to come back to our services. You can't do that without a plan and good case management techniques. With that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Brazil. So if you have questions, we will allow an opportunity to ask questions at the end of the session. But if you couldn't think of anything, and she might allow you to ask in between, feel free to put it in the chat box. If you're just too shy to ask the question, she did nod her head that in between the time that you can ask questions, it'll be an open conversation, right? And if it's areas of difficulties that you found that you want to specifically ask about, I already have my thought process of areas of difficulties. Feel free to ask this question now. She is good at her job. So feel free to ask those questions now. If it's areas that we can help support you more in, or if we need to do a part 2 to this training, we will know and we'll arrange for that. But once again, Dr. Brazil, I am going to mute. Well, I'm going to leave it open because it sounds like y'all doing a good job. If I'm starting to hear a lot of back noise, then I'll go ahead and mute it. And you should be able to unmute yourself. If you're having problems unmuting yourself, drop a chat and I will try to open it up for you. Thank you all so much. And the next voice will be Dr. Brazil.
Thank you so much. So can everybody hear me okay? Great. I got a new camera because my other one stopped working. So I didn't know if the mic was working on it okay or not. So please stop me, interrupt me, holler, yell, jump up and down on your screen if you have a question, or if you need clarification on something that I am going to talk about. So case management and the way you do case management can vary based on your client, based on the situation, based on your agency, based on, it can be month to month. Changes can be month to month because situations change and resources change. Something that was available last month may no longer be available this month. So what I'm going to do with the training is I'm going to talk about just some general ideas and principles. And if there's something specific that I talk about that y'all would like more information on, I'll be more than happy to do what I can to try to provide that. So let me share my screen. And okay, so can everyone see my screen okay? Yes? Yes. Okay, thank you.
Dr. Brazil, hold on 1 second. Let me do a mic check again because I have someone saying they cannot hear you. Can everyone hear Dr. Brazil clearly?
Yes, this is Sarita, and I can hear.
Thank you. Okay, so I think the person who put that in the chat, please check your volume on your computer. It may be connected to your computer. Sorry about that, Dr. Brazil. You can proceed.
No, absolutely fine. So if there's any technical difficulties, let me know. I have lots of issues with technology all the time. So we can certainly work through them together. All right, so I want to first ask a question. How do y'all define helping the people that you work with? If there were 1 or 2 words that you would use to define that, what would it be?
Empowerment.
Empowering. Anything else?
Stabilize.
Stabilize. And y'all can put it in the chat if you don't want to speak. So helping can be defined in lots, being resourceful, ask them what they need, serving, right? So we can define helping in lots of different ways. Giving, and sometimes that help is going to look different, right? So one day we might be helping them be resourceful. Sometimes another day we might be helping them by asking them what they need, or helping them establish some sort of stability in their lives. So that definition can change based on what's happening with the client and what's happening in their environment. When you think about what you do, as we're working through the PowerPoint, we're working through the presentation, how do you define your role? Is there one of these 11 that jump out at you, or is there something missing that you think needs to be on this list? Is there anything specific that kind of sticks out to you as something that you see your role as? Are you more of a supporter or a navigator or facilitator? When I did case management, I always kind of felt like I was a communicator for my clients. Like they had a hard time working with other agencies. And so I spent a lot of time translating almost. Advocate and resource. Advocate, absolutely. Supporter. And sometimes it's encouraging, right? People can be in a place where life has not dealt them a good hand and they just need somebody to say, you're okay, right? And we've got you. So what is case management? So I pulled just some kind of vague top 3 ideas, right? It's collaborative. It's collaboration between you and the client, the case manager and the client. It should be client driven. And I think someone said that earlier, right? Asking them what they need. And it's designed to promote autonomy and wellness, right? Designed to help. As a case manager, part of what you're trying to do is help someone learn how to handle what they need to handle, make decisions for themselves, achieve the goals that they've set for themselves, and reach some type of a wellness, right? So they can feel better. And that wellness, how we define wellness may be different for different clients. But we always ask them, what do you want? Right? So what would be a good outcome for you? Initially in case management, particularly when we're dealing with people who have experienced a lot of negative life events or are in a really bad place, we start out providing them as much of the help as possible, right? So we're trying to help them learn to do. And as we're trying to help them learn to do, we may have to do for them and guide them through the process. But eventually we want to get to a place where they're more autonomous and are able to function and do those things for themselves. But initially we want to support them as they move through that process. And by doing that, it helps them learn problem solving. So if they need to do something, and we help them with it because initially they feel like they can't do it or they're not able to do it. If we help them through the process, they're watching and learning from us as we're doing it. So it helps them learn problem solving skills on their own. A lot of us learn by watching other folks. By providing that initial support, it increases the likelihood that they're more likely to succeed. And it helps you, if you work really closely and really assistive with your client in the very beginning, it helps you start to understand what their limitations are. What can this person do? Because every client's different. There's no two that look the same or that are going to have the same needs or the same abilities. So you might have one client that can handle everything and they've got good problem solving skills and they're able to kind of manage a lot of different things at one time. And then you may have another client who really just can't seem to do much at this point. And so over time, that sense of self-efficacy, as you're helping the client and they're learning from you, that sense of self-efficacy increases and their stability in their situation begins to increase. However, my experience in case management was, even when I had a client that was really stable and they could do a lot of different things, they always kind of needed me as that home base, right? That they could come back to and say, hey, this is what's going on. This is what I'm doing. What do you think about it, right? It kind of gave them that support and access to somebody that they knew understood their situation. So how do we build that sense of self-efficacy? Because once clients develop this idea that they can do it, they have the ability to do it, and they start feeling capable of doing some things, then they're going to be able to achieve and maintain that stability. So how do we build that self-efficacy in that person? Well, we start by asking them, what are the goals that you want to achieve? What do you want your life to look like? What do you want to be different? It always starts with the client and what they want. We recognize that a small change can be all that's needed for bigger changes to happen. So if I'm successful in one thing, I'm going to start feeling like I can be successful in other things. So if we're working with somebody, helping them achieve those small little steps can help them learn to be more effective and make them feel like they can actually accomplish things. One of the goals of case management is to create kind of this idea of an activated client, right? Where they're motivated and activated to take care of things that they need to take care of. And that can be really difficult sometimes, getting them to that place. But if we can help them start building a sense of self-efficacy by those little baby steps, right? So if I feel like I can't do anything and I'm able to accomplish one thing, like maybe it's, I was able to go talk to someone about getting me some food assistance without help, right? So maybe, so you've sent me to this place and say, go talk to them and they can help you with food. And I'm able to accomplish that. Then I have a sense that, hey, I can do some things. Whereas before I may feel like I couldn't do anything. Anytime you're working with clients in goal development, you should always focus on what's possible and changeable and not the impossible, because you don't want them to run into a roadblock that lets them say, well, see, I can't do anything. Nothing's going to change for me. So, for instance, if a client says, well, I want a better relationship with my sibling, is that even possible if that's one of the goals, right? And they say, well, I want a better relationship with my sibling. If it's possible, then that's a good goal to help them achieve. If they say, I want a good relationship with my sibling and their sibling is far away and won't speak to them, that might not be a goal they could achieve. But what other things could they do? Is it they need family support? Is it they need more social support? Are there other options? So think about goal setting from what can they actually do, right? And help them craft goals that will help them get what they want. Does that make sense? There's a few assumptions that I like to talk about in case management that helped me when I was doing active case management think about my clients and what they were dealing with. And so one assumption is that people are resourceful and they want things to change. They want things to be different. So individuals are coming to see you for assistance because they want it to be different. They want life to be different. They want some things to improve for them. So we assume that they have some resources They have some capacity to change, and they want those to change. But they've become so overwhelmed that they've forgotten how to problem solve, or they've become so overwhelmed that they don't think change is necessary, is available to them anymore. It's not going to happen. No matter what I do, I'm always in this situation. I'm sure you've heard clients say, I've done that, it didn't work. I've done that, it didn't help. It doesn't matter. If I go talk to them, they're not going to help me. If I do this, fill out this form, it's not going to happen for me. Right. So people get to a place where they're so beaten down that they don't feel like they can achieve anything. Sometimes we have to assume that our clients lack basic understanding and even literacy skills. So, you know, they may need to fill out a specific form to get a service. And if you hand them the form, you know, and they say, okay, great, and they leave with it, they may not even know how to read it and they don't want to tell you. So they just never do the form. Or maybe they don't understand what the form is asking. Maybe there's some language on the form that's not clear. Did somebody have a question or something?
Yes, Dr. Brazil, I have a question.
Sure.
Or maybe one a better example. So if we're working, for example, with a chronically homeless person who have not been in housing for 3 or 4 years, it may, based on this example, we're saying maybe they might not be ready for themselves to go find their own housing and meet the landlord, but smaller steps, whereas I'm holding their hand, taking them to see different people, maybe being the voice for them until they have the capacity to do it themselves. Is that a good example of what you're saying?
Yes. And so imagine if you've been living outdoors, right, for 5 or 6 years, and then all of a sudden you're connected to a case manager and they say, well, here's 4 different places you can go visit and ask about housing. They have some availability. You just need to go talk to them. That may be a really scary thought for you. You may not have been able to communicate with people routinely in those years that you've been living outdoors. You may have just been communicating with other homeless individuals, or maybe even living just out by yourself, isolated. And so now you're being asked to go talk to other people. That may be very scary. And if you don't feel like you can do it, you're probably not going to do it. And even people who have experienced a lot of negative life events and who really truly want help may be reluctant to say, I can't, right? It may be embarrassing to them to be able to say, I'm afraid to talk to someone, or I can't read this, or I don't know how to fill this out. So if we go with them, if we help them, if we walk them through the process, then they are more likely to, one, see you do it, right? So they're like, okay, this is how you do it. This is how you can handle that situation. You give them a frame of reference. You give them a way to learn about it. And you start to understand what their capacity is. What can they do? Because you're seeing them interact in those environments and in those situations. And so that'll help you understand where the deficits are for your client and how you can better help them. So a lot of times when we see clients and they don't follow through, right? When we ask them to do things and they don't follow through, I like to think of it as this like big red flag where they're saying, I'm not getting what I need. You're not meeting me where I am at, right? I need something else from you. I need something else, some more support, or I need a better understanding. So using these kind of ideas have always helped me deal with people and not kind of get frustrated with, I don't understand why they're not moving forward. There's I don't know how many of you have seen the movie The Shawshank Redemption, but this one line from The Shawshank Redemption really speaks to me about people who have had a lot of negative things happen to them or have found themselves in really bad places with limited resources and supports. Sometimes if you've experienced a lot of loss, it's not good to hope that things are going to be different, because if you get your hopes up, then you get let down routinely. So people can find themselves in this place where they just kind of said, well, this is just what it's going to be, and I'm not going to dare to dream that it could be different. And in that process, they've lost that sense of self-efficacy, that they can change, that things can change and things can be different for them. So it's just something I had never thought about the idea of hoping as being dangerous to a person, right? That it could be a threat to their emotional stability or their well-being. So I touched on this briefly. I wanted to talk about capacity. And it's something that we have to think about not only for our clients, but for ourselves, right? Everybody has capacity limits, right? You can only take on so much. And so when you're thinking about working with your clients, think about what is their capacity to do what I'm asking them to do. Am I overwhelming them? They may already be 99% overwhelmed just by life, by surviving. And us giving them more than that additional 1% has pushed them over their capacity to do things. So part of that, helping them in the beginning and really walking them through processes and helping them get things done, is understanding that idea of capacity, right? Because you're going to work with them side by side and you'll see, okay, this they can handle, this they can't handle, right? Really working with them. Because if you overwhelm somebody, they shut down and they don't do anything. If you think about yourself, when you've got so much work to do, way too many things to get done, it's really hard to get started. Because it's like, it's just too much. I can't get it all done. So think about, as you're building treatment options for your clients, as you're building intervention ideas, or you're working with them throughout their process, are you exceeding their capacity? Do you see signs that they're shutting down, that they're just not moving, that they're immobilized? Yes.
Okay, Dr. Bizzell, just wanted to interject here where this is connecting with me, with capacity and then again, hope. I think, yes, hope, if it's blown out of range, it could be dangerous, but as a person working with people, trying to get them to a place of being safe, stable, and progressing upward, then we want them to have some hope. It's just that we don't want to have it outside of their capacity.
Yes.
You see, outside of the capacity. So knowing that, I think it's our duty as working with people and case managing people, try not to let that get too far out of reach, when and you don't want people to build up all this false hope when the capacity is not there to attain these things. But we do want them to have hope. I mean,
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think my point, and maybe I didn't say it very well, was sometimes they come to us without any hope because it was dangerous for them to dream. And so we're asking them to do things, and we're saying, if you do this, this is going to happen. And they may be thinking, no, I'm not going to believe that's ever going to happen. I have no hope for that because I'm going to be let down again. Right. And so part of us helping them through the process and them achieving those goals, those little baby step goals, and moving through things, can help them start understanding, I can have some hope. Yes. Like things can be different, right?
Right.
Perfect. Yes, absolutely. No, we do not want them to not have hope ever, right? We want them to have some hope for their future, and have some positive feelings about what their future holds for them. Thank you. And so along that note, it was a perfect segue to that, goal setting, right? So I said before, you always establish what the client wants to achieve, right? Where do they want to get? And sometimes that's not where we think they should get, right? We have a different idea about what would be better for them, but we need them to set goals for themselves. What do they want to achieve? And then list them in order of importance for that individual. Like, they may make a list that says, I need housing, I need books to read, I need a new coat. And we might think a new coat is the most important thing. So we're going to work on that first because it's cold outside. And that just came into my head because it is a little chilly today. But they may think books to read are more important, right? So we want to help them prioritize those goals in a way that makes sense for them. Like, what do they want to achieve? If they're invested in those goals, if they are believing in those goals, if they have investment in the achieving those things, you're going to be more likely to work with you to try to make those things happen. And so I always ask my clients, let's work on what's the most important thing to you. Let's make some goals. What do you want for yourself? And what is the most important thing? And let's start with the most important thing and work our way down. And you all know this. I mean, these are just some things to consider when you're thinking about oops, sorry about that. I'm going the wrong way. What are some things to consider when you're trying to create goal statements, trying to find out what people want for themselves? Things like safety are usually primary, right? If someone's not safe, we really need to help them get somewhere safe. And then all the other things, right? Shelter, clothing, food, employment, medical care, mental health care, social supports. And this could be, do they have a social group, right? Do they have a friend they can talk to? We as human beings are social and we need social interactions. So do they have pro-social interactions that they can depend on and work through? So those are even things that we need to consider when setting goals.
Dr. Brazil,
yes,
it's okay to set goals around a parameter, right? So we do want to consider what their goals are, but we give them some choices to choose from. Is that what you're saying? Because I'm also thinking about some direct case management I used to provide it. This one client, their first goal was they wanted to become a comedian. Despite the fact they were chronically homeless and had no income, needed disability and everything else. So is it okay to set parameters around, okay, these are the type of goals we're looking at working on versus just any type of goal that they may have?
Yeah, and so I think some of that is how do you frame it? So if their primary goal in life is to become a comedian, then maybe that becomes the long-term goal, right? So this is what we're going to work for in the next year. But let's talk about some short-term things to get you there, right? If you're homeless and you have no housing, you have no clothes, you have no food, it's going to be hard for you to be successful as a comedian. So we can list that as one of your goals, right? Your long-term goal is to become a comedian. Great. That's a good goal for you. That's important to you. Let's look at that long-term. What are the steps we have to take to get you to that goal? Does that make sense?
That's good. Thank you.
And so, there is the right now, the safety, the clothing, the housing, medical care, those things that really need to happen. And then there's the long-term things. And depending on how long your services last with a client, it could be a few weeks, a few months, it could be a year, 2 years, 3 years. It just depends on how your services are set up within your individual agency. But if you're always working with the idea of what does my client want to achieve and helping them achieve that, they're going to be more motivated to work on those smaller things to get to that big thing. So I have a little case. If y'all could read this, I just want to ask a few questions because I want to understand perspectives of all of you. And hopefully you can read it. I hope it's not too small. Okay, did everybody get a chance to read it? Anybody need more time? So if we're working with Chris from, I'm sorry, go ahead. So if we're working with Chris from this idea of capacity and setting goals, short-term and long-term goals, and we're thinking about what treatment we're going to have for Chris, what kind of needs did you identify that he needs help with, just off the top of your head? So if you're thinking about Chris as your client, what kind of needs do you think he would have?
Some mental health.
Mental
care.
health?
Yeah.
Okay.
Probably some medical, just plain medical.
Right. He's got all the health issues, the arthritis. Yeah.
And then
he would need to. Sorry. No, you're good. He's not had any support. It doesn't sound like his whole life. So he would need a team that would show him support. I think that would be probably the thing that would be a game changer for him.
Okay. In the chat, we've got environmental,
yes.
AA, file for possibly disability, right? Maybe see if we can figure out what's going on with this disability, and housing, right?
Yeah. Safe, affordable housing.
Safe, affordable housing. Yes, absolutely. So, because he's trying to be mindful of where he lives, because he knows he's had this issue with alcohol and substances in the past. So he's trying to be very careful about where he lives. What goal? Think about a goal that you would maybe work with him on to set. So this is thinking about his needs. Are there some goals that you think might be in a ballpark for him? Maybe some long-term things.
I think that environmental component is essential because, you know, he could get mental health and all the others, but if he's in that toxic environment, then that all is going to, you know, affect him. I think that's the first thing I would try to address.
Okay.
I'm thinking socialization, the support team, anger management, life skills.
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else? Let's see. Housing, tax credit housing, but agreement for therapy, counseling, get a sponsor for AA.
Wow, that's good.
Right. So those would be some goals that maybe if he comes to you and he says, you know, in the case, he's come for help, right? And he's got these needs. He needs housing. He recognizes he needs housing. So he's come to you. So giving these ideas to him and then allowing him to say, yeah, this will work for me. This is how I'm going to move forward. These are things that are important to me, can help you by you constructing some beginning things for him. This can help him establish some of those goals. Intervention wise, let's say we want to get him housing, right? How might we walk him through that process? We've just met him. We don't know a lot about him. What would we do to get him housing potentially?
We take an assessment of what he wants in housing, what he considers housing.
Okay.
Maybe match him to, or I probably would handhold him with landlords or property owners that were mom and pop, like private landlords, to give
Okay.
him the individuality of a space that would be conducive to what he's able to deal with, not put him in a
Okay.
big environment.
Okay.
I would do a
So-
lot of hand holding there.
Yeah, so he's never sought assistance before, so he's not likely to even understand how assistance works. Like, what
Mhm.
could you even do for him? Like, what does your agency do for him, right? And you know, he says he's a go-getter, but there's lots of deficits there, so we can't be sure that this is something he can go get. In the case, he has tried to find housing, but he's not been able to. So that could be a flag for us that maybe he doesn't really know how to look for adequate housing, that he's not good at finding adequate housing. Sometimes when we do things like this for a living all the time, it just kind of clicks for us and makes sense. Oh, well, I would just do this and I would do that. But our clients may not know that, right? They may have never experienced anything other than just going and looking it up online, right? Or just asking people.
Well, do you think, I just throwing it out there, do you think maybe the mental health component would be the first thing that you address? Because thinking a mental health assessment, they may come up with, they might have some housing for that would fit, his needs. And then that would also, and if it's a group type of setting, or, the same type of situation among other people, he would have a support system. I'm sure there'd be some group therapy, and somebody there to help him with just the regular life skill things that maybe he had not done. I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there.
No, I think that's a great idea. I mean, it may open some doors for him that have not been opened before.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
Even along those lines, now that you've mentioned that, even maybe getting a good medical assessment. So he may be able to benefit from some specialized housing because of his medical needs. That's a great idea. Didn't even think about that. Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah. Didn't even think about that. Great idea. So sometimes we get people like Chris, and they are not really ready to move on and do things. And motivational interviewing can help us kind of move that needle for them just a little bit. Have any of y'all done anything with motivational interviewing before? Have y'all done any motivational interviewing trainings? Have you heard of it? Are you familiar with it at all?
Hello.
I see a couple of head nods. So motivational interviewing really helps a client find the internal motivation to make change. So it's not you trying to get them to do things differently. It's them deciding it's important enough to them to move forward and do something. And it really helps as the case manager, you're supporting them as they're thinking about what they want for their future and developing a vision for their future. It is not really an intervention. There are some components of it that technically are intervention, but the idea of it is it's a way of interacting with your client. It's a way of spending time with your client, and a way of being with your client. And it helps them resolve any internal doubt, self-doubt that they have about whether they can achieve a goal or not. So that ambivalence of, I want things to be different, but do I really want things to be different? And so through conversation and support, you're doing all of those things. It is directive, not that you're telling someone what to do, but you're directing them in the process of developing goals and thinking about what they want to do differently for their future.
Do what?
I think somebody may have their mic on.
I'll let you know. All right. Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Can y'all hear me now? All right, great. So it's not that interaction. I mean, it's not an intervention, it's an interaction. It's an interaction process that includes some intervention components. And so what does that look like? I can't in an hour or an hour and a half or 2 hours or maybe even 4 really get into a lot of detail on motivational interviewing, but there are some things that I think would be helpful, that I have found to be helpful in working with people who seem to be kind of stuck and can't move forward. And so that's really what I'm going to just touch on. Please stop me if you have any questions about how to apply it or how it might work with a specific situation. So the goal of motivational interviewing, as I said before, is to help somebody develop a sense of internal motivation for moving forward. You as the case manager are not providing motivation. You're not, encouraging them. I want you to do this. You need to do that. Come on, let's go, let's go, let's get it. You are using reflective listening and Socratic questions to help them find the motivation to move forward. And I'll give you some examples of that later in the PowerPoint. And really what you're doing is you're helping somebody talk themselves into making changes, right? So they're creating their own internal thinking, their own internal dialogue that's saying, I really want to make these changes. I want things to be different. When do you use it? When somebody that you're working with has ambivalence about doing something, about taking an action. And what does that look like in case management? They have an objection to a plan that's based off of goals that they set. So if our fellow Chris, one of his goals is to move into an apartment, and you say to him, well, the first thing that I need you to do is come here on Tuesday so we can fill out a form and work through this and make a list of places we might visit and schedule some things. And he says to you in return, well, I don't know. I don't know if I can come Tuesday. So initially you might think, well, what is up here? He's just not invested, right? He doesn't want to do this. He's not part of this plan here. But remember, I talked about capacity, and I talked about sometimes people feel like they just can't. So many things have happened to them that they don't dare to dream that things could be different. So that may be his issue. So he may be saying, well, I don't know if I can come on Tuesday, maybe a couple of weeks, maybe another time. So that's the time when you would use motivational interviewing. If they sound uncertain about services or working with you on something, they have mixed feelings about whether they want something or not. They say they don't think they can do it. Oh, I couldn't possibly do that. That's just not something that I think I can do. They tell you they don't have the time. Oh, I can't do that. I don't have time to do that. I don't have time to go down to this place and talk to them about getting me some food assistance. If you, as the case manager, start feeling frustrated or annoyed with your client, right? Like, I'm trying to help this person and they're not working with me, right? When you start having those feelings, then that's an opportunity for you to say, let me back up and try a little motivational interviewing and see if that's going to help with the situation, if that's going to help unstick my client and get them moving forward. It is very person-centered. It is about the individual. You help them identify what they want to change and why it's important to them, instead of why they should do something or why it's important to you or someone else in their life. It helps them understand what's standing in the way of making those changes, what those changes are going to look like in their life later on, and how they can work to improve their chances of success. And it makes some assumptions about change. So motivational interviewing says motivation is a state. It's not a trait, right? Sometimes we put people in this category of they just don't want to do anything. It's just who they are. But what motivational interviewing says is it's not who they are. It's a state that they're in. They found themselves in this place where they lack motivation. And it could be that capacity issue. It could be that hope issue, right? It could be a skill issue. They don't have the skills, knowledge, or even idea of how to do something. So it's coming across as being a trait, right? They're just not motivated, but it's really just a state. It's the place that they're living at the moment, right? They're living in their life in this place of, I can't, right? It's not going to work. When you get resistance from someone, according to motivational interviewing, it's not your role as the case manager to push back and try to get them to stop resisting. It's your opportunity to step back and say, what do we need to do differently? Because I'm obviously missing something here. There's somewhere we need to revisit. They're resistant because what I'm doing is not necessarily working. They have that ambivalence for a reason. And motivational interviewing is all about understanding why somebody wants a change, but they can't move forward. So if your client wants to be a comedian, but they're not doing anything to get there, why does that ambivalence exist? Like, what's going on? You focus on your client as an ally, not an adversary. We're in this together, right? And you're going to help me and I'm going to help you. And we'll get where you want to go if we can work together. And it assumes that recovery and change is intrinsic to who we are as people, that we have an ability inherently to recover from those negative life events and make the changes that we want to make. Make sense? Okay. How many of you are familiar with the stages of change? It's used a lot in addictions and addictions recovery, but there's this idea that everybody has a stage of change. People are always in some place about changing, right? So after the holiday, after Thanksgiving, I recognized that I really needed to not eat any more sweet stuff because I ate way too much pie over Thanksgiving. So before Thanksgiving, I wasn't even thinking about I needed to change the amount of sweet things that I ate. So that would be pre-contemplation, right? I did not even contemplate I needed to stop eating sweet stuff. I didn't even really contemplate it while I was eating all the sweet stuff over Thanksgiving. I was just enjoying my food, right? And my favorite thing for Thanksgiving holiday meal is bread. I'm a roll person. I love rolls. I could eat rolls all day, right? But as I'm eating them, I'm not thinking I need to not do this. So I'm in pre-contemplation. I have no awareness whatsoever that anything needs to change for me. However, on Monday, I thought, wow, I feel really heavy right now. I feel like I've had way too much food. My stomach's still full. So I started thinking maybe I need to change something. So that's contemplation. I'm thinking about I need to make a change. So Tuesday, I was thinking, okay, well, I need to do a few things. I got to get rid of all the leftover sweet stuff in my house. And I probably should not plan on eating anything with bread for this week, right? So I'm preparing, like, what am I going to do? I'm thinking about what I'm going to do. I should be in the action phase, like I should not be eating sweets, and I should have gotten rid of all that stuff in my house. But I have to admit, I have a candy bar in my drawer that I feel like is calling my name. for later on today. So I don't know that I'll make it to the action phase today, but the action phase is doing what you set forth. And when I get to a place where I actually take action and I stop eating sweets and breads and all that stuff, then I would go into maintenance phase, which means I'm not eating that stuff anymore and I just need to maintain not eating that stuff. And then last is relapse, which I feel will happen at Christmas because I know I'm going to eat more at Christmas. So even if I can get to that maintenance phase before Christmas, I feel pretty certain that relapse is going to happen right around the 23rd of December, right? So when I start making all that stuff. So this is kind of stages of change. So we start with pre-contemplation, which is basically I'm not aware of a change that I need to make, and you move all the way through to maintenance. And we do expect relapse at some point. And so what would your task be as a case manager? So if you're working with a client, the first thing you got to do is figure out, someone give me a common client issue that they need to work on, they need to change to achieve a goal. Somebody got something y'all see routinely?
Start addressing the steps as a plan.
Like which steps?
If they're looking for housing, to be attentive to actually looking for housing, or either as I team up with them as an ally, just to check in. I ask them sometimes, will you call me maybe in a couple of days?
Okay.
I put something in their prompt to see if I can get them to respond. And then I'll say to them, call me, check in with me to see what I have, meaning checking availability. I can't put them anywhere, but I can give them options as to what's available. And I'll put on them, will you call me? We're in this together. Will you call me in a couple of days to see where we are, or what you found, or what I have?
Okay.
Right. First step.
All right. So you've got somebody who I'll be your client, right? And you've asked me to call you every like 3 days to check in, see if I found anything or you found any options for me. And
Correct.
I'm just not doing it, right?
Right.
But I want housing. I've told you my goal is to get housing, right? I have said to you, I want housing. Help me get housing. It's so important to me.
Correct.
But I'm not calling and following up with you, right?
Right.
So the first thing is, if I'm in pre-contemplation, I'm not recognizing that what I'm doing is a problem, right?
Not at all.
Right. So I may be sitting there saying, I don't have a problem, right? She's going to help me get housing and I don't have a problem. So your task as the case manager would be, one, to raise doubt and say, think about what you're doing. How is this helping you get housing? Right? You want housing. The only way I can get you housing is if we communicate. If you're not talking to me, how can I help you get housing? Right? So you're making them start to think about, well, maybe what I'm doing is not helping me reach that goal. And so bringing doubt to their decision making, increasing their awareness about the possibilities. Hey, look, Michelle, if you'd have called me 2 days ago, I had a house that I thought I could get you in, right? Or you could maybe say, I had a client last year that I was able to get housing, but I got real lucky with them. They were able to show up. They called me just at the right time. I had like 30 minutes to get them in, but they called me. So I was able to get them in, and I knew they were going to call me. Right. So you're increasing my awareness of how what I'm doing is not helping me. Right.
Okay.
And then say, are you, if you're not calling me, this create dissatisfaction, right, in this situation. If you're not calling me, if you're not reaching out to me, are you happy with the way things are? Is this going to get you where you want to get? right?
I'll ask them ultimately, do you still want housing?
Right. Are you still interested in housing? Well, yes, I do.
And I
Right.
might give them some stats. A couple of people have already gotten housed. They're doing it. What can I do to help you get there?
Right. So part of it is helping me understand moving from that pre-contemplation phase about my behavior is not helping, right? I need to understand, I need to make a change.
Correct.
So by talking to me about these things, by raising doubt that my actions are helpful, by increasing my awareness about how what I'm doing is keeping me from getting what I want, and pointing out you're not satisfied with where you are. And if things continue the way they are, it's still, you're not going to get housing, right? So the
Correct.
idea by having that conversation is to move me to the contemplation phase where I'm thinking, okay, maybe I do need to do something different. Maybe I do need to do it different. Maybe I do need to start calling oops, I'm sorry, I did this again. Maybe I do need to start calling every day, right? And this is an oversimplified example, but I'm just trying to relate it to things that you all are kind of dealing with, right? So if I'm like, okay, so I say to you, it says T. Cowart. Do you go by Miss Cowart or?
Tanya, I just didn't know
Tanya?
how to change it.
Oh, okay. So if I say to you, do you have your clients call you Tanya, or they call you something else?
They call me Miss Cowart sometimes. Some of them call me Miss Tanya. I try to bring it, for those that can individualize, they call me Miss Tanya. If they're calling me Miss Cowart, it's something that they want to do. I don't know.
Okay. All right. So if I say to you, Miss Tanya, I was thinking about our conversation last week, and maybe I do need to do things a little bit differently, to get housed, right? But I don't think I can do that right now. I'm not real sure. So I'm starting to contemplate that I need to make that change, that I need to start calling you on a routine basis, but I haven't committed to actually doing anything different, right? But I'm telling you, I think you're right, Ms. Tanya, you're right. I do need to be a little more proactive. I do need to reach out to you. That's your opportunity to have a conversation with me and say, let's reiterate the reasons why you want housing. Let's talk again about why making this change, reaching out, being more proactive, calling me is going to make a difference.
Okay.
Okay. So you're reinforcing in my head, I want housing, and I know I got to do this to get to here, right? If I want to get to my goal, I got to start here. And the first thing I have to do is I got to make that change. I got to start doing what I have to do. I got to call every couple of days, right? Okay. And then let's say you want me to call every Tuesday and Thursday. Like you say, call me every Tuesday, Thursday in the morning before lunch. That way I can touch bases with you and we can figure something out. Let's say
Correct.
I call you on Tuesday, but I don't call you on Thursday. I call you the next Tuesday, right? You can say, I am so glad you called me, right? We are moving forward, right? We got
Correct.
something going now, right?
We motivate.
That's it, exactly. And so then the
take
next
every
thing,
little bit and roll it into momentum, hopefully for the snowball effect.
absolutely, right? So you're building on them, you're giving that positive change. So you did call me Tuesday, and that's fabulous. I'm so proud of you for doing that. Do you think you could call me Thursday this week? Can you try to call me Thursday this week, right? So reinforce small changes. Even if they say to you, well, I called you Tuesday, I didn't call you Thursday, but I did go to call you, right? And I had to use a friend's phone, and I got over to where their house was and they weren't home. And then I was going to go back and then I forgot. Okay, well, great. You made the effort, right? You tried.
Great. No worries. Let's do it again.
Yes, right. Exactly. Let's keep doing it. Asking them. So if your client is saying, if I say to you, Miss Tanya, I have to use my friend's phone and he's not always around, can't always get to his phone. You could say, well, why don't you do this? But it would be better to say, how else can you call me?
Correct.
right? Are there
Correct.
other options you have? Are there other ways you could reach out to me? Maybe you need to call me on a different day or a different time. Maybe we originally agreed on a time that's now not working for you.
Correct.
Right? So get me to come up with those solutions, because now it's internal to me and I'm owning it. So you don't want to give solutions. You want them to come up with solutions.
Exactly.
And when they can't decide, right, on what they want to do, right, when they're ambiguous about it, ask about it, talk about it. Well, you said you wanted to change time with your friends, but it seemed to me like you're not really sure. So why would that not work? Why you said if you used your friend's phone, you could use them on Thursday, and now you're saying it's not working. Why do you think that's not working? Right? Is there another decision you can make? Is there another way you can go? Is that making sense to everybody?
Yes.
When somebody is in the preparation stage, right? So I've talked to Ms. Tanya, we got a plan. I'm preparing to implement that plan. The best thing you can do is anytime I say, this is what I'm going to do, right? Support me in that. That's a great idea. I'm glad that's what you're going to do. Write it down. Make it simple for them. Get them to write it down. Reminders, this is what I'm going to do. Next week, I promise you, Miss Tanya, I'm going to call you Tuesday and Thursday, and this is how I'm going to do it, right? If you can, write it on a little piece of paper, write it on a little Post-it. If you got little notebooks you give them, write it on a notebook. Give them every opportunity for success by creating a plan for action. And so this is where they're actually doing it. This is where I would be calling Miss Tanya on Tuesday and Thursday, right? What is my action plan as I was preparing for that? But you also want to address any needs, skills, coping, resources. So if Miss Tanya wants me to call her on Tuesdays and Thursdays so that I can get housing, which is my goal, do I know how to use a phone? Can I cope with adversity, right? If I'm supposed to call on Tuesday and Thursday and I can't get to a phone, are there alternate plans? Do I have good coping skills and problem solving skills? Am I worried that if I didn't call her on Tuesday and Thursday that she's going to be upset with me, right? So maybe I don't want to respond to her because I have a history of when I didn't do something I was supposed to, getting in lots of trouble. And so is that going to affect my response to that situation? So address that as you're developing that action plan, as you're preparing and developing that action plan, right? Ask them what might keep you from calling me, what might keep you from filling out the form, what might keep you from visiting this agency, what might keep you from showing up here on Wednesday. And get them to tell you what it is they would need from you. And then you can provide them with skills and coping and solutions and problem solving. Does that make sense?
Sounds good.
And this is even when and this is where one of the core things that case managers do really come into play, connecting people to supports and resources, right? These people can help you with that. This group can help you with that. This individual can help you with that. And you may have to, going back to that idea of capacity and hope, you may have to walk them through the process of accessing those resources and supports. But if you can help them with it, you can help them build that sense of self-efficacy. You can help them gain some stability with the idea that as they learn and life improves for them and they're achieving goals, that they're going to be able to do things on their own moving forward. But in the beginning, you may have to be that person, right? You may have to be that primary sense of help and support. When somebody reaches the maintenance phase, this is going to be the client that you've got housing. So Ms. Tanya, you did a great job. You helped me get housing. I'm in housing. I may need to come back and talk to you. I may be confused. I may be worried that I'm going to lose my housing. Maybe there's something that I'm supposed to do that I did not do that's jeopardized my housing. And so helping me understand that, right? Like, what do I need to do? And even making plans. So if I'm a client that has had housing in the past and lost it, and now you've got me housed again, what kinds of things do we need to work on to make sure that I can stay in housing? I can maintain my place in housing. Right. So in that maintenance phase, I don't lose my housing. I don't relapse into issues that may cost me my housing. Like maybe I'm supposed to check in. Maybe I live in a housing situation where I'm supposed to check in once a month with someone, right? And I have a history of not checking in. So in that maintenance phase, you want to set me up for success so that I don't go back to doing things the way that I used to do them. We expect that even once we work with clients and they're doing well and they're doing the things that they're supposed to be doing, and they're working through things, that they're gonna have bad days, right? And they're gonna relapse, and they're not gonna do. They may be moving forward on their plan, doing everything we've asked them to do, and then something happens, and then they relapse and they don't follow through with something they were supposed to follow through with. Expect it. It's just part of the process. It could be a capacity issue. It could be a hope issue. It could be any number of things. But if we can help our clients understand that it's part of a learning process, it's part of what happens to you, then they're less likely to say, look, see, nothing ever changes for me, and lose that hope that we're trying to build for them.
I think giving them a preface after their house, if they've had a failure at some point, that they understand that they still have case management, that we're still with them. They'll still have a wellness. I'll still stay connected as an ally.
Okay.
And then give them a preface. If we get to this point, individualized in the goal plan, you said here, we'll revisit your strengths and your weaknesses. If you feel like we're getting to this point, would you give me a call? Or what would you do? Write it down. I give them something to have a coping mechanism for that may have happened in the past, how to work through it, and in the preface. And then a follow-up. They're going to get that follow-up from me to visit, to check on them. They're going to get a follow-up from the case manager. I'm the housing navigator, case manager, point of contact that they see, but they'll also get a call from the case manager to reinforce resources. Are you needing anything? How are things going? How are things going on the job? And I might call and say, I'm asking how things going on with your housing, but is there anything else I can help you with? There are resources for this, there are resources for that. Based on your plan here, this was a weakness back. Do you need financial literacy? How are you coming with getting your money orders? Something as basic as paying your rent. Are you able to save? You know, so that they'll know that it might have happened, it may happen again, but here's what we got in place just in case you feel like this, so that you can call somebody or you have this resource to reach out to.
Right. Yeah. Right. And that's a great idea, a great example of how to build a good relapse prevention plan, right? A good plan to keep somebody in that maintenance phase where they're doing well and they're achieving their goals and they're getting where they want to be. And so, you know, doing all those things, checking all those boxes, where are the issues, where are they likely to show up? So the meat of motivational interviewing is really about how, remember I said it really wasn't an intervention, it's more of a way of being with someone. So the meat of motivational interviewing is really how you communicate with people. And there's this idea, this acronym, OARS, that you can use to think about how are you going to work with a client using a motivational interviewing lens. And the first is open-ended questions. So sometimes we get assessments and they're very closed questions. Do you want this? Yes or no. Do you need this? Yes or no. When we're building goal statements and treatment plans with people, it's much more beneficial to ask them those open-ended questions. Not only does it give us a range of ideas of what they need and what they want and where they are, it also helps build rapport. So if I ask you, can I help you get housing? That's very different than how can I help you? Right? And it's a different way of speaking to someone. So thinking about those open-ended questions, how are you asking questions to someone? So would you like to tell me about your past experiences with agencies? So sometimes that's real important. They may have had a really good experience. They may have had a negative experience. How would you like things to be different? Sometimes when clients come to you and they don't know, they're not happy, life is not good for them, maybe they do need housing, but there may be a lot of other things going on. Asking them, how would you like things to be different? If your life were better, if it were what you wanted it to be, what would that look like? Can you tell me what that looks like? If they don't know, you can ask them, what would a friend of yours say it would look like if life was better for you? What are the positive things and less good things, right? Trying to stay away from negative language. What are instead of saying what are positive and what are negatives, or what are good things and what are bad things, like talking about what are positives and less good things, to just kind of keep a more positive thing. What would you lose if you give up this? What would you gain if you gave up this? What have you tried before to get housing? What have you tried before to deal with this issue? And when you get them to a place and they're just not, sometimes when they're not working their plan, they're not working through toward their goals that you established with them, sometimes just saying, well, what do you want to do? What do you want to happen next? And if they say, well, I just want to, I want to be in housing and I want to be left alone. So let's look at what you're doing now to help you get there. How can we get you there? What needs to change for you to be able to get there? Affirmations, this is just about being positive. And so anytime you're working with somebody in motivational interviewing, you always want to be positive and give positive affirmations and recognize their strengths. It enhances their sense of self-efficacy. Don't just throw out affirmations that are meaningless. I mean, you guys know this, right? You want to make sure that when you're talking to somebody and you're giving them positive affirmations, that they're congruent with the situation and that they're genuine. So if someone says, if you say, you know, I think you're doing a really good job in getting the things done. There's still some things that have to be worked on, but I think you're doing a really, really good job. That's a positive affirmation, and it can help you build rapport with your client, particularly these clients who have experienced a lot of adversity and had a lot of negative things happen in their life, and they've just they're struggling with that idea of hope. And this is just an example of different forms of affirmations. So a lower tier affirmation, just an easy one, is good job, right? It's just general praise. Mid-level affirmation is I really value how hard you've been working on getting your homework in on time. These are just examples. So you could say something like, I really value how hard you've been working on getting your paperwork in on time, or paying your rent on time, or making it to your doctor's appointments, or coming to see me, or calling me. And then the highest is really saying something about who they are, right? Their character. You know, I think it's amazing how resilient you've been in light of everything that you've had to deal with. I think it's very brave of you to come in here and ask for help. I think it's amazing that you're able to overcome all of these things. So this helps build rapport, and it helps someone build their sense of self-efficacy, and can also help them build that sense of hope. Reflective listening. So reflective listening is a huge part of motivational interviewing, and all reflective listening is reflecting back what a client is telling you. So if someone tells you a lot of information, they give you a long story, it's taking that information and giving it back to them. And it helps to make sure that you are both clear on what's being said. And this is kind of a way for you to think about building a reflective statement. You listen, what are they saying? You decide what do they mean, and then you state your interpretation. So if someone says to me, I have been on the streets for the last 15 years, and you know, I've been arrested, I've been thrown out of places, I have been locked up in institutions, and I can't get anybody to listen to what I need, and I can't get the stuff I need. So reflective statement. So what did they say? They've had a lot of bad things happen to them and they've been on the street. The meaning that I'm getting from that statement is that they've had a lot of bad things happen to them and they haven't gotten the support and help that they needed. So I'm going to say to them, so it sounds to me like you've had a pretty rough time and you've not had a lot of help and people have not been kind to you. So I'm reflecting back what they've said to me. And it helps communicate to them that I'm listening and that I understand. It also gives me clarity that we're on the same page. It builds rapport and it can help me develop those good goal statements for my client moving forward. And so examples of ways to start a reflective listening statement is it sounds like, it seems that, so you're having trouble, you're not ready to, you're feeling that. So those are just some ideas to give you an idea of how you might frame when your client has told you their story or when they're telling you about a struggle that they're having. They can't make it to an appointment. They're not able to do some of the things that you're asking them to do or that they need to do for themselves to achieve the goals that they've established. These are some statements when they're explaining their story that you can feed back to them to help them understand how you're viewing their situation. And then finally, summarizing the last part of ORS, when you have the whole story, when you know what's going on, then you can summarize with, let me make sure I understand, and summarize their whole situation, where they're going, what the goals are, and what they need to get there. So in conclusion, if your client's not moving toward their goals, if they're not meeting those milestones and the requirements that's expected of them, there's some things that you can ask yourself. Have I exceeded their capacity? And really think about what you're asking them to do, and is it really too much based on their individualized situation? Do I understand the experiences that they've had in making life changes? Do I really understand what's happening with them, what's happened to them, and where they may have lost some of that hope and that sense of self-efficacy? What stage of change is this person in? Are they ready to start doing things differently yet? Or do we need to get them to a place where they're ready to take action and make a plan to move forward? Is my approach in working with them match that stage? Am I too far ahead of them? Am I too far behind them? And once I've answered all these questions, what's going to be my strategy moving forward to facilitate change? So those are questions. If you're working with someone who seems to be stuck, right? They're not moving forward. Maybe you're feeling frustrated with. Those are some questions you can ask yourself to revisit how you're working with them. So questions, comments, specific information that you would like? Yes.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So we have a domestic violence shelter. It's in DeSoto County in Mississippi, and we have a smaller staff. So I myself and actually my shelter manager and another staff member do case management. And I don't know how often it would be realistic because our case management comes with the clients in the shelter. How often is it, I hate to say normal, to meet with them? Is it, I just don't know. I mean, can I get anybody's opinion on that?
I mean, I would think, it sounds like you've got limited capacity for personnel.
Right.
And I would think it would have to be individualized for your clients. You may have clients that need more individualized attention than others. I don't know if there's a rule of thumb about that
Okay.
or not.
And I could interject here. It
Is
would be
that a
based on your
DV
policy.
shelter?
Yes, ma'am. It's a DV shelter.
I think policy is that we have to do 30 days. We definitely have to do that, right?
Yes, if you are ESG funded, but I don't think you receive ESG funding at this time, but if you are ESG funded, and I also believe COC funding require case management contact every 30 days. So if your
Oh.
shelter is run by a Pacific grant, you might have to look at that regulations in regards to contact requirement. Other than that, you might also look at best practices. But for federal ESG COC grants, contact is required every 30 days.
Okay.
But like Dr. Brazil was saying, I think that's individualized. You'll know depending on the level where they are, you know, what's going on with them as to if you need to see them more often or if you could actually go a month without, you know, contact.
Okay. Thank you.
This was enlightening. It was good.
Thank you. I hope it was helpful.
Yes.
Thank you all so much. The information will be on our website, so you can always go back. I do use motivational interviewing on my 12-year-old son, and I swear it works because he thinks he's making a decision. But the information will be posted on our website. If you would like to see more content on case management best practices or this type of training, please let me know. Once again, thank you, Dr. Brazil. This information was really helpful.
Yes.
And I'm sure if y'all go back to your office and y'all, you know, a client comes to mind, y'all have questions, I'm sure you'll be able to help us via email if we shoot you an email or two, Dr. Brazil.
Oh, yes, absolutely. I appreciate all the hard work y'all are doing, and I know it is a difficult task that y'all take on every day. So anything I can do to support y'all, I would be more than happy to.
Thank you.
Great, thank you all so much. So this will be our last office hours for the year. We will be skipping the month of December because Christmas, right? I will
Right.
see y'all in 2024, and we will be starting again with office hours. If we have a need for the emergency training, I will send out an email. Thank you all so much. And once again, thank you, Dr. Brazil. It was great.
Bye.